In a prior video, we had issues of one of my database vocabularies not working. This one I added called minimum time in current residence. And if you recall, I added a new table to the database. So I'm going to reopen SQL Studio here. Okay, so I added this table called business rule parms. And as you recall, I put two fields there: minimum time on job and minimum time in residence. And remember that this table called customer info was also added when we ran the setup.bat file for this loan processing project. They added a new table, and it has credit card balances for three customers. And so here's the secret: they actually had a fact retriever. So if we look over here in the loan SDK sample, we're in the loan processing using business rules. They have a subdirectory here called my fact retriever, and we'll look at that code in just a minute. But first I want to show you how the fact retriever ties in. So here in the business rule composer, if we click on the policy and then scroll up where we have room here, in that policy there's a section right here called fact retriever. And if I put the cursor over there, you can see it says Microsoft Samples BizTalk Loan Processing using Business Rules. Let me get that again. My Fact Retriever. And it says over here, I tried to show you and move the cursor at the same time. Well, anyway, this is pointing to the disk where that fact retriever was, in the GAC actually. So when you click here, well, that's actually the reference to the GAC. So let's go look at the code now. So here's the My Fact Retriever that they wrote and they included with this setup, okay? And so you see here we have database fact retriever implements iFact retriever and iFact remover. Then we have update facts, and then here we have the code that actually exposes part of the database to the business rule engine. And you noticed here they had customer info, right? But nowhere in here is there any mention to the new table that I created. So what I'm going to have to do here is copy. So we're going to copy these two lines of code right here. Now notice this is the return parameter called facts handle out, and I don't think that's going to really matter. Even though we're returning DC1, I think the more important thing is the assert here. So let's look at a couple things. If I mouse over SQL connection, you can see that's just the normal system.data.sql client.sql connection. But if I mouse over data connection, you can see this is a class, an object that's specific to the Microsoft rule engine. So we're going to create a data connection 2 here, and we're going to specify my new table name, which was business rule parms. Okay, so we're going to rebuild this. Notice we're going to assert DC2. When you do an assert, that is inserting those facts into the business rule engine, which is all the values in that table basically. Okay, so it rebuilt, and now we're going to have to put this back in the GAC. So here's the Windows assembly cache, and we'll go here to the bin, debug, and today's date, just confirming. So now we put that in the cache, the GAC, and now we have to restart the BizTalk host, of course. Actually, we can also test this in the business rule composer. So let me close and reopen the composer as well. So I've reopened this, I've associated my file sample2, and I'm going to click test. So to see if it works, we go to the same file we loaded in, should now be written out. And it does say here residency status is invalid. So let's just do a couple little checks to really make sure we fixed it. So I'm going to open this file in Notepad again. and I want to wipe out the values of these statuses here. So residency status, I'm going to put here null. So I'm going to put null in all 4 of these. Because last time we ran this, they were all 3 of them were working, but residency status was not. Okay, so back to the rule composer. Let's do a test policy again. And there's our file. Let's click test. It's done. We now go back to here, wrong directory, and we open our sample 2. And again, it looks like it's working because it says residency status is invalid. Now, let's change our database and see if we can actually affect the change. So I had this value set at kind of high here where people had to live in their home for 55 months before they could apparently get this loan. So now let's just lower that down to say 4 months. And let's go back and run it again. So now we'll do test policy. Test. And go observe the results. I think I still have it here. So I can just hit refresh. And notice it says residency status is valid now. So by lowering the requirements, this guy here had time in months of 45. So 45 is greater than 6, therefore it's valid. 45 is less than 55 I had before, that would make it invalid. So what this shows is that you can use a vocabulary tied to the database, but what you have to do is have the proper fact retriever. And so a good way to do a fact retriever is just go look at the sample code that they give you here. So we were in the sample SDK, business rules loan processing, and then under that they have my fact retriever. And then we open that in C#, Visual Studio, and I added a new data connection for the table that I was dealing with, and then I asserted that table basically, or that data connection, into the rules knowledge base so that it could work with that data. Remember earlier it said the rules weren't firing. Well, rules can't fire when the facts don't exist. If you have a condition that says if A is greater than B, and if A has never been asserted or doesn't exist, then that rule will not fire. So the last thing I want to show you here is if you go to a policy that's already been deployed like this, and you go down to the fact retriever, of course it's going to be locked and you won't be able to see how to add one. So what I did is I took a different policy here and I copied it so it was in the non-saved, non-deployed state. And now if I come down here to fact retriever, you can see the ... ellipsis here. And then when you click it, you can choose your assembly and your class from the GAC. So you can see here now, I just go down to my fact retriever, you click OK, and then it's going to give you a list of all the classes in that DLL, and you click the one you want and you click OK, and that saves it here. So that's how you add a fact retriever to an existing policy. And that concludes this video.